Good day. My name is John Brandt, Information Security Professional Practices Lead here at ISACA. I would like to welcome all of our conference participants today to today's session titled Upskilling Credentials and Soft Skills, Closing the Cyber Workforce Gap. Today, I'm joined by my two esteemed panelists, Caitlin McGaugh and Greg Tuhill. Caitlin, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Caitlin McGaugh, CEO and founder of Candor McGaugh, an executive search and career management practice for IT audit, cybersecurity, and IT GRC professionals.
Greg.
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Tuhill. I am board director at ISACA. I'm also, in my day job, I'm the director of the CERT division at the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. And previously, I served as the president of Appgate Federal, a cybersecurity and advanced technologies company. And before that, I was the Chief Information Security Officer of the United States government. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you very much. I want to begin this morning by sharing new research from ISACA that measures where we are with the current state of the cybersecurity workforce, particularly the skills gaps that hiring managers are noticing and the long time it takes to hire open roles in their cybersecurity teams. ISACA's 2021 State of Cybersecurity was released this week in conjunction with RSA. This annual research is released in two parts. The first examines the cybersecurity workforce, and the second, which will be released this summer, looks at the threat landscape and current trends in combating cyber attacks. More than 3,600 cybersecurity leaders participated in this year's annual survey, which represents our largest response and 44% over last year. We found that as reported each year, there remains challenges in finding qualified, well-rounded candidates. Research also shows that understaffed teams remain strongly correlated to an increasing number of cyber attacks. Despite years of effort by industry, government, and academia, and many taxpayer dollars to develop a stronger pipeline of cybersecurity candidates, little has changed. One problem remains that while cybersecurity jobs are in high demand, few organizations offer entry-level opportunities, leaving few entry points into the field. How can we, once and for all, begin making a significant impact to the ongoing skills gap? Before we begin discussing these gaps and possible solutions, I want to briefly share some responses that ISACA received to its 2021 State of Cybersecurity Survey. With this particular question here, how would you describe the current staffing of your organization's cybersecurity team? 61% say that their cybersecurity teams are understaffed. 14% saying significantly. Only 34% say that their teams are appropriately staffed. Of interest here that although that number is low, it does represent a slight uptick from last year of 3 percentage points. Does your organization have unfilled or open cybersecurity positions? And more than half of respondents say that their team still has unfilled positions. And this is just a growing trend that continues year after year and really a pain point for everyone who's involved trying to make a difference. On average, how long does it take your organization to fill a cybersecurity position with a qualified candidate? In one glimmer of good news, only 16% reported it takes longer than 6 months to fill an open cybersecurity position. In 2020, 29% last reported that it takes longer than 6 months. However, that 3 to 6 month time frame is still very prevalent and increasing. In 2020, 30% had said it'd take 3 to 6 months, which represents a double-digit gain from the year prior. On average, how many cybersecurity applicants are well qualified for the position which they're applying? 50% of those generally surveyed do not believe their applicants are well qualified. It can be pretty disheartening to be a hiring manager and feel that only 6% of the applications you receive are from candidates who are fully qualified for that role. two more data points to add that aren't on the slide are that only 27% say that recent university graduates are well prepared for cybersecurity challenges that their organizations are facing. And only 31% say that their HR teams regularly understand their hiring needs. What are the biggest skills gaps you see in cybersecurity professionals? While technical skills remain in highest demand, employers are seeking well-rounded candidates with solid soft skills. The biggest skills gaps, as shown here on the screen, begin with soft skills at 56%. And as you'll see, technical related skills are a significant distance behind those and vary everything from security controls down to basic IT knowledge. When we hear that cyber professionals lack soft skills, what does this generally entail? I'm going to first start with Caitlin, if you would take this question.
Thanks, Greg. John, sorry. I think there's some things that come up all the time, such as, verbal and communication skills and writing, but things that I hear about, particularly from CISOs, is emotional intelligence, being able to understand and manage your own emotions in order to effectively communicate, empathize with others, as well as resolve conflicts. And in fact, the CISO that I was just talking with said he'd take emotional intelligence any day over certifications. Not that certifications are irrelevant, but just that it's so much harder to train emotional intelligence and enthusiasm rather than the skill set, the hard skill set. And another thing that comes to mind is resilience, which folds in a lot of different sorts of attributes, such as optimism and persistence or grit, continuing to push through even when you face challenges, because gosh, cybersecurity can be a frustrating business. Things can go terribly wrong, and people have to be able to sort of get back on the horse and get going to solve those huge problems. So I would highlight those two amongst the many that we often hear about.
Thank you very much. Greg, would you weigh in on this?
Yeah, I will give a big amen to Caitlin on that. Having served in a wide variety of organizations, for example, at one point I was head of the Air Force's cyber training programs and commanded a wing of 12,000 airmen as they were entering their careers. But then I've been an operational commander. I've led the federal government's cyber programs as the Chief Information Security Officer. And we've seen all of that with the different environments that I've been involved with. And that grit and perseverance, those are things that you really need to nurture with individuals, and particularly in the cyber career field. And our survey shows that the demand out there, about 79% are looking for folks who are individual contributors. And, we say that cybersecurity really is a team sport, because you've got to work along a wide range of skill sets in order to have an effective risk management program for your cyber environment. So having those soft skills, the communications, the empathy, the grit, the perseverance, the ability to work as a team, and it's often a pickup team based on different situations, and that kind of flexibility and adaptability, that's a collection of skills that leaders need to nurture. And often you may get a new employee that is not necessarily fully experienced in those areas.
Yeah.
But as a leader, you've got to help those folks gain those skills and nurture them along the way. And it's a twin-edged sword, because you're not going to really have an opportunity to find that perfect employee right off the bat. Sometimes you're going to have to say, okay, so what skills and attributes do I must have? And then where can I grow that employee into meet the needs of the team?
Yeah.
Fantastic responses, and a lot of value there, and things that we've heard before. Something I didn't hear mentioned, though, in particular, which if we could just extend this for a second here is critical thinking, right? In particular, the analytical, the data interpretation. And I think that in today's modern landscape, especially with this emphasis on misinformation or disinformation, right? So two questions come to mind for me. One is that the prototypical job description that's out there is typically highly focused on the technical attributes you're looking for, right? And while we've seen some betterment on those with job postings shrinking in size and not necessarily looking for the, the unicorn who's done everything, it begs the question is if soft skills is remaining the largest gap there, are employers actually changing how they're hiring, right? And what's happening with regards to the programs, the talent pipeline, if you will. Caitlin?
Well, I think let me address first. You brought up, sort of the job descriptions. It's interesting that I'm seeing more job descriptions that are actually folding in bullets around sort of the soft skill attributes that companies are looking for. But I think something that continues to be problematic is the search for the purple squirrel, the aspirational job description, which tends to rule out too many people, women in particular, if they don't see a really strong correlation between the skill sets that they possess and those listed on the job description, will often be discouraged from applying. And then to Greg's point about management, I think managers really absolutely have to understand kind of what they need in the job, and who can really do it. Because there are many ways to expand that candidate pipeline if you think creatively about what it really takes to do the job and what could be trained from a hard skills perspective with a moderate investment in training. Greg, what do you think?
I'd like to pile on to that. At the end of the day, there's a couple of things that I've learned throughout my professional career. And one that's really important is one I learned in the military, where leaders lead people, managers manage stuff. And in the cyber business, you've got to be both. You've got to be both a leader and a manager. And you can come to the table with a certain amount of skills out there, but you also have to recognize that you're going to grow in your skill set, both as a manager of stuff like processes and procedures, but also leader of people. And the key thing that helps folks along the way, and if I'm a hiring authority, I'm looking for the proper attitude. And there's lots of different ways that you can look during the interview process. Does this person have the right attitude? Does he or she have the ability to go out there and be dynamic and embrace new challenges? Do they have a willingness to learn? Are they eager to better themselves? All of those things, it's very difficult in a resume to push forward those type of things, but candidates can really posture themselves well by demonstrating the potential for growth, the willingness to extend beyond just the job description, and demonstrate that they're willing to go out there and compete well, such as going out and getting certifications from ISACA or other organizations to prove not only their ability to expand their horizons and demonstrate their technical prowess, but also to go above and beyond. And attitude will always trump the paper route. So, as a hiring authority and somebody who's hired a lot of folks and has had to recruit a lot of folks, I'm looking for folks that are showing me the potential to do even more than what they've done in the past. And I can go and I can teach you how to be a better leader. I can teach you how to be a better manager, but I can't teach you to have a positive attitude. I can help just emulate that. And I can show you the way. So as we're recruiting, we're looking for that person who is demonstrating the potential to learn and grow.
If I can add just one more thing, I think that those are excellent points. And to that, it's on the candidate side to sort of demonstrate their skill set and to bring those stories about their good works and their attributes forward. But it's also on hiring leaders. And Greg, you strike me as an exemplary one. You actually draw out people, but I've seen so many hiring leaders in my professional practice who just simply aren't good interviewers and maybe more comfortable interviewing candidates around the technical skills, but in fact aren't very thoughtful at times about the questions they could ask and the listening they could do around sort of the soft skills and the traits that the candidates might bring forward if they were asked other sorts of questions. So just to kind of put that out there to hiring leaders to also really think about the questions they're asking and what they're listening for.
Yeah, and let me go one more pile on before we hand back to John. I'm actually looking for folks that provide me diversity, equity, and inclusion in my workforce. And for those folks who feel like, gee whiz, I'm underqualified for certain portions of this particular job, if you've got the hard skills and you can contribute as part of that team, I still want to hear from you. I still want you to apply for those type of jobs and go through that process. And don't be deterred just because you may not have 100% of all the skills I'm looking for.
Right.
So for our audience members who have looked at jobs and said, hey, I don't meet 100%, so I'm not going to apply, or I'm not probably the right person for this. Let me, as the hiring authority, be the decider on that. Tell me what you bring to the table. And the best thing you can do is not sell yourself short. I can teach you a whole lot. I'm looking for somebody who has potential to grow. And a lot of my peers are out there thinking the same way, because it's a challenging market for hiring. And I don't want to necessarily wait for 6 months or 4 months to get somebody who's perfect. I'm willing to get somebody in there who can hit the ground running and deliver some capability, but really can grow to that 100%. Back to you, John.
Those are two outstanding perspectives. And I think that I would just add on to that, right, to wrap up this point before we open it to our first opportunity for questions, is that to recognize that, largely speaking, even today, the workforce represents a myriad of people who just took different journeys, right? And some of the best analysts out there didn't come up through what some would coin the perfect technical pipeline or whatnot, right? Because they look at problems differently, and that really speaks to both what you had said. At this time, we'll open up for questions from the audience, specifically related to soft skills. Okay, we're going to advance. While soft skills are a great asset to be able to communicate and lead, critical thinking skills are also required to be successful in cybersecurity roles. What are some of the hard skills that a cybersecurity professional needs to pair with these softer skills? We had touched on these briefly, right? I had introduced it previously when we had just talked about critical thinking there, but really taking it, and we're focusing specifically on those hard skills related to cybersecurity profession, which for level setting, right, is very, very broad. They could be SOC related jobs, they could be pen testing, it could be on the compliance and governance side of things. Greg, we'll start with you on this one.
Well, thanks, John. As we take a look at the types of skills that folks in our sector are looking for, during my military career, I was involved in both education and training. And we defined education differently than training. Training focuses on how to do certain things, but education focuses on understanding the why. And being able to integrate the two is the acme of skill. And when we are looking to bring folks on board into our cybersecurity organizations, typically it's very easy to gauge levels of accomplishment on the how, the hard skills, the certs, the demonstrated capabilities that have been illustrated in their resumes based upon certifications and accreditations that the individuals have. Some organizations, including the military here in the United States, are actually doing what I call the last starfighter tests, where they're actually doing hands-on demonstrations of capabilities. And I think that's way cool, and we need to keep on doing that. But on the soft skills, those things that we're also looking for, we are looking for folks who have the ability to communicate well, orally, in writing, in email, and be able to give briefings and be able to articulate themselves well, because that helps build better teams. So we're looking for skills like that. We are, in fact, looking for folks who are able to integrate themselves into very inclusive teams, because if you're going in like in an incident response to a cyber event, you're going to roll in with a database administrator, a network administrator, generally somebody from the supervisory team who's going to choreograph activities. Yeah, and you're going to have other specialists who come in often as part of ad hoc teams. So we're looking for folks who can integrate well as part of teams and generally be very flexible and adaptive. So as audience members, if you're building out your resume and you're looking to position yourself well for a cybersecurity position, consider putting in examples of how your education has prepped you with certain skills and abilities, how you, even if you're an individual contributor, how you've worked as members of teams, how you've maybe been involved in software development or using software, what kind of coding skills you have, what kind of languages do you speak? And oh, by the way, your oral languages are just as important as your coding languages, because more and more in a global community, and the internet brings us all together, having language skills that go orally as well as coding, boy, you can write your own ticket. So it's an exciting time. And I look forward to hearing what Caitlin has to say on this as well.
Thanks, Greg. I want to dovetail right into Greg's commentary on the flip side with hiring leaders looking to, again, how do you do that effectively in terms of drawing out the candidate to hear about how do they think? How do you get to that? I used to work with Motorola extensively for many, many, many years. And one of the things that impressed me about their hiring process was the fact that they would bring in professionals and have them do a case study. You get 30 minutes to prep it, write down your notes, and then 30 minutes to present it to a hiring leader who kind of listens and walks through it and has a dialogue. And what you see from that is kind of how did this person approach problem solving? And one of the things that was interesting, now this was particularly in audit, and I'll just speak to that, but they would take a financial operational auditor who knew nothing about computer systems and give them an IT audit case study. Why did they do that? Because they wanted, not that they wanted to stress the candidate out, but they wanted to see how did the person approach problem solving in a context that they weren't totally comfortable. So I think the short case study can really give you an opportunity to dialogue with candidates in a different way. So I'm just throw that in as an add-on to Greg's extensive answer there, which is awesome.
Those are excellent points there. And I think that, when I hear you both speak here from both the hiring manager perspective, as well as like if you put yourself in the shoes of the candidate, is humility comes to mind, right? At the end of the day, great commentary on education versus training. And I think that's something that gets lost out there at times, right? Because first of all, I think all professions, you have to embrace this thing that lifelong learning is never going to go away, right? And part of that's going to happen professionally. Some of that happens personally, based on experiences and whatnot. But to recognize, we don't know what we don't know. But at the same time, I like, the recommendation of the case studies or whatnot, and also involving other people perhaps in some of the interview process, or at least to review how they were previously scripted, because some of I think the newer folks to the industry might have a different perspective, and kind of help shape those things to really draw out the best out of candidates.
Yeah.
We're going to transition here, real quick here, and focus here specifically, right, on how a cybersecurity student or a candidate that's transitioning from another field, are these soft skills something that can actually be, do we really think they're going to learn them in a university program? And I'll preface that by saying that, every program that I've either, been part of or evaluated, there's got to be a selling point to that, right? What's the value there? And for cybersecurity, the inclination is it's going to be cybersecurity related things. But as we've talked about thus far, all of these soft skills are largely important. And have we potentially undervalued the general education components leading to which? Caitlin?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I went out and I was looking at various cybersecurity master's programs and even undergraduate programs in CS in preparation for this. And I was actually pretty surprised that at, top universities in the master's programs, there wasn't much outside sort of the hard skills teaching, and the undergraduate electives in CS still aren't necessarily the ones that are going to foster strong soft skill development. But I think well-run programs should optimally, if they're going to create well-rounded security professionals, be obviously stressing team projects where people have to learn to collaborate, negotiate, solve problems together, and involve presenting and writing the kinds of reports that industry is looking for. So I can't speak to that as any expert around university programs per se, but it seems that those things can be taught if the right components are built in. But adding to that, on the student side, here you are in this amazing setting, and gosh, I mean, learning those soft skill components can be done through joining student organizations where you can take a leadership role, or at least volunteer your time teaching perhaps high school students coding, or teaching computer literacy out in the community. And so you build empathy for learning how to work with non-technical people, listening to their problems and trying to explain technical stuff in non-technical terms. There's just a whole myriad of opportunities. One of my favorite information security leaders told me that she learned soft skills, conflict resolution, negotiation, and just understanding people by working as a bartender throughout college. So I think there's that huge opportunity, if you take some customer-facing roles and internships, to learn a tremendous amount about soft skills that will augment the university program.
Yeah, and I'll pile on there too. As we take a look at the ISACA survey, it's the data shows that 27% of the hiring officials say that, the recent university grads are, well prepared to do everything that's expected during their, during their position in their tenure. Nobody expects, I think, that when you come right out of school, you're going to be ready to hit the ground and be the master of everything. You're not going to be there. What you have to do is make sure that you have that well-rounded education. And it doesn't matter if you're coming out of high school or a university program, you have to be balanced. And we can train you to do a lot of great skills. We can also help you be educated on some other things that could round you out. Ultimately, though, it doesn't matter if you're coming in from another career field too, and you're being upskilled into the cyber career field. You need to be balanced, and you should be striving to be somebody who works not only within your job description, but being able to branch out well beyond that job description. And a lot of the things that Caitlin was saying just resonates extremely well for me in my professional career. We're looking for people who can think and move quickly on their feet and are adaptable to change. If there's one thing about the cyber world is change is inevitable, and the job that you'll have in 5 years, you'll be inventing. It hasn't been invented yet.
Fantastic points by the both of you. This is a great transition here. So we talked about, you know, the flexibility and the grit. So we're going to focus here, you know, for a few minutes here on upskilling teams in elevating your staff, right? Well, which seems to be increasing based on the respondent data here. Is you have these trusted, you know, corporate resources. You know what they are, but how do you then teach them, right? Those hard skills. Is we've heard from both of you, and I've done it as well, is all those intangibles. If you bring that to the table, I could teach you to do most things. Now, arguably, maybe the glide slope is a little longer in some cases, depending on the aspect. So from your perspectives, what positions at an enterprise are a natural transition into cybersecurity? Greg?
Well, you know, I found during my professional career, there's several different positions where I have seen folks successfully transition. And the organization that I saw the best transition were from the Air Force security police people. You know, the folks that were manning the flight line and guarding the airplanes. But when they hit the staff sergeant level, they became eligible for cross training. Some of the smartest cyber pros that I've ever worked with were former Air Force security police officers. I've also had folks who were in the information management career field, you know, administrative staff. They understood the processes and the procedures, the culture, the language of the business. But then when we layered on technical skills, they made a seamless transition into the cyber career field. And I had one lady, she was exceptional. And when she ultimately retired, she was one of the government's most senior cybersecurity professionals. And she started out as an intern clerk, worked her way up to secretary, and then just exploded up the chain as she got technical skills added to the repertoire she brought to the table. So as long as you understand the culture of organizations, we can teach you the technology. And we've seen folks from multiple career fields make the pivot into cyber and do so extremely well. And auditors and controllers, I'm seeing more and more folks in the auditor and the accounting fields making the pivot as well, because they've spent so much time analyzing and doing all of the business process analysis. Once we pair them with the technical skills, look out.
Fantastic. Well, we're running short on time, so I have one last question here, and I'm going to leave this. I'm going to put this out to you, Caitlin. How do we expand the net so we are attracting more diverse candidates?
Yeah, I think there's some really important pieces there. First, I think, you know, just from the get-go, being willing to look at people that fit the need, what really needs to get done in the job, and where can that person come from? I mean, beyond, IT audit, IT, crim justice, military. I was going to pile on to Greg's commentary there. One of my best people who's moved into security actually came from a Navy mission logistics role, and he had brilliant skills to transfer. But within the organization, if you think broadly, there are people that have the soft skills, the creativity, the analytical skills to move into cybersecurity if they're offered the training. And those people could come from risk management, they could come from marketing, they could come from public relations. the hard side of marketing is entirely analytically oriented and looking for anomalies and things that stand out and patterns that should be absorbed and recognized, as well as the writing and the speaking skills. But engineering and, as I mentioned, logistics are all places that people can come from. But the key thing is to have a welcoming culture. I mean, from the start of outreach to candidates, and especially if you're trying to recruit them into security from other areas, and working with diverse populations as well that are underrepresented in security. The process from the first outreach through the recruiting, interviewing, onboarding to the day-to-day work, the culture of the team has to be welcoming and accepting. And I just can't stress that enough. But I think also, a couple of things is you've got to, get the better job description so that you don't discourage people from applying. You have to have hiring managers who are thinking more broadly. So I think those would be some of the points I would put in there.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. So as we wrap up here, key takeaways from the presentation. And while nothing here is hard and fast, I think I'm hoping that this panel discussion was thought-provoking and really made hiring managers and candidates alike, or prospective candidates, right? Because people continue to move within the industry, to kind of catalog what it is you're asking for and what it is that you bring to a particular job, or what you might need there. Surely expanded criteria has been a common theme we've looking at non-cyber staff that already understand a corporate culture, which there's a lot of value there. Something we didn't get a chance to really to touch on here, training programs. ISACA offers a wide range of opportunities, from new entry points up to your mid-level and executive level folks. With that, I will open it up for more questions for our panelists.